Today we have to listen Kāmacchanda Nivarana, sense desire. Before explaining the sense desire Kāmacchanda, we need to understand right concentration, samadhi. Because Kāmacchanda and samadhi are said to be opposites. In describing right concentration, Buddha pointed to the four jhanas as example for right concentration. The four jhanas actually belong to samatha meditation, but they can be the basis for vipassana meditation also. For those yogis who selected samatha as a vehicle for enlightenment, or who first attain jhanas and then turn to vipassana meditation, the jhanas can be made the objects of vipassana meditation and thus become the basic for vipassana. But here in Vipassana yogi should understand that momentary concentration, Khanika Samadhi, is also meant, because without Khanika Samadhi, momentary concentration, there can be no Vipassana, there can be no enlightenment. So this concentration has been gained when yogis can keep their mind on the meditation objects for some time, for 10 or 50 minutes, for half an hour or longer. There may be very few distractions for the mind at that time, and even when there is a distraction, you will be able to dismiss that distraction immediately. In the Satipatthana Sutta and in many other suttas, Samma Samadhi, right concentration, is described as consisting of the four stages of jhana. Buddha said, bhikkhus, herein a bhikkhu quite secluded from sense pleasure, quite secluded from unwholesome mental states, attains and dwells in the first jhana, accompanied by initial obligation and sustained obligation, with rapture and happiness born of seclusion. Here, Pali is Viveseva Kamehi. Viveseva Kamehi, secluded from sense pleasure. Vivecha Akusale Dhamehi, quite secluded from unwholesome states. So, what is important to know in general about the jhanas is that sense pleasure and jhanas are incompatible. Kāmacchanda, sense pleasures are hindrances to jhanas. When you want to get jhanas, you have to get away from sense pleasure and practice samatha meditation. Kāmacchanda, sense pleasures are said to be opposites to concentration. They are hindrances to vipassana meditation also. So yogi cannot mix vipassana meditation with sense pleasures. When you are practicing vipassana meditation, your practice has to be pure. It should not be mixed with anything that involves sense pleasures. When you develop mindfulness by observing any object manifested at the six senses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, the first thing you would encounter is Nivarana, 5 hindrances. If you are a beginner meditator, having not yet developed continuous mindfulness and strong concentration, then you cannot gain control over your mind. And so it would wander as freely as always to every sense objects it loves. Such an unruly mental states are the 5 kinds known as 5 hindrances. They are called hindrances because they hinder the noble path to Nirvana, they block the noble path to Nirvana. In the outline of the sermon, Buddha mentions these 5 hindrances as 5 factors to abandon. In this way, having abandoned 5 factors, Pinchinga Vipahino. And then Buddha described these 5 factors in this way. Katincha Bekwe Beku Pinchinga Vipahino Hoti Ita Bekwe Bekuno Kāmacchanda Bhino Hoti Pyabara Bhino Hoti Tina Maitam Bhina Hoti Oticha Kokocham Bhina Hoti Vichikecha Bhina Hoti. That means, how has a bhikkhu abandoned 5 factors? Here, a bhikkhu has abandoned sense desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, and skeptical doubt. It is in this way that a bhikkhu has abandoned 5 factors. Bhikkhus should have abandoned 5 factors. So sense desire means that we should take a prompt action to remove sense desire during our meditation. Kāmacchanda In Pali, Kama means desirable objects and Chanda means desire. So desire for desirable objects is the literal meaning of Kāmacchanda. So Kama or Kamaguna is an object that everybody desire to enjoy. Suppose, for example, you have prepared food, delicious food you like, thereupon flies appear and hover over the food because they love to eat also, and then ants sneak in with purpose to enjoy the food. So we need to cover the food properly to keep it away from them. Otherwise, we have to share the food with them. So an object that everybody wants to enjoy is called karma, the desirable. In an ultimate sense, such desirable objects are classified into 5 kinds. Rupa yadanam, visible objects pleasant to see. Saddha yadanam, audible objects nice to hear. Gandha yadanam, odorous objects fragrant to smell. Rasa yadanam, eatable objects delicious to eat. Potappa yadanam, tangible objects pleasant to touch. 5 sense objects. So in the sermon, Buddha compares sense objects to a piece of meat, mansa pe supama, a piece of meat carried off by a kite that becomes a target of fierce attack by other birds. When other birds attack, finally the bird can no longer withstand the attack and has to drop the meat down. Then another kite comes in and it takes away. Of course, the second kite is also attacked by other birds in the same way as the first one. It also has to drop the meat in the end because of too much attack. In this way, kites attack any birds that possess the meat. A bird can escape the fierce attack only when it lets go of the meat. In the same way, sensual objects allures all living beings, and since its owner is the target of attack. If you have one sense object, other people may make attempts to rob you of it, and they will attack you. Indeed, the desirable objects are the root cause of all the attacks between individuals. Because of the sensual desirable objects, there are arguments between groups. Because of these sensual objects, desirable objects, there are conflict between political parties and between countries. So desirable objects are the root cause of all the attacks. So people who are wise and good-hearted see these defects in the sensual objects and sensual desire and make an attempt to renounce them. However, many people unable to see the defects in them, cherish and get attached to them, make great effort in pursuit of sensual objects. Some people are even worse. They cherish sensual pleasure so much and think of it so highly that they even consider it earthly heaven, Loka Nibbana. So they seek for it at all costs by doing anything good or bad. So sense objects, being desirable and alluring, are called kama or kamaguna, that means sensual bonds. And Buddha compared the sensual desire and its human victim to the dect and the dector, respectively. So he instructed his disciple to get rid of the sensual desire rapidly, just as the debtor who has to work hard to repay his debt in time. In this regard, we have to remember these facts in this way. Sensual desire means that take a prompt action to remove it. During the time of the Buddha, a debtor had to be very respectful to his creditor. If the debtor failed to settle the debt in time, he had to apologize his creditor in a very humble manner. Even the creditor scolded him. The debtor never dared to say any words or do anything disagreeable to his creditor. This is what happened in olden days as well as during the Buddha's time. So a debtor always has to respect his creditor even though he repays his debt in time, because he may need to get some more loans later. Only when a man repays all his debt and needs no more loans, he can be no longer required to respect his creditor. In this sense, desire for an object is compared to the debt, because you have to respect the desirable objects and take great care of uh, that object. The more desirous you are of an object, the more respect you must pay to it, and the greater care you have to take of it. Suppose, for example, you cherish a beautiful clothing. You have to use it very carefully so that you won't make dirty it. Even greater care needs to be taken of it. If it is a precious things like gold, silver, jewelry, and other ornaments that you really cherish, you have to keep them in a safe box under lock and key. When you wear ornaments on ceremonious occasion, for example, you are likely to have trouble looking for a secure place. In this way, the more desirous you are of an object, the more respectful you must to be it, and the greater care you have to take of it. This is a problem related to desire for inanimate things. Such problem can be even worse when it comes to a living beings, such as very good friends, spouse, and child, and so on. Wife and husband, for example, have to speak very carefully. They have to behave very carefully and respectfully so that one would not hurt the other's feeling. The more you love your spouse, the more respectfully you have to treat him or her, not to get annoyed his or her feeling. So you have to respect any objects you love, animate or inanimate, in the same way as a debtor respects his creditor. When you are not desirous of anything or any individual, you will become completely carefree, exactly like the one who is free from debt. That is why during the intensive retreat, if sensual desire arises in you, you have to capture the sensual desire, note, desire, desire, desire. You have to thoroughly capture the desire. So we means during the retreat, because it may not be possible for you to note every desire that occurs in daily life when you are busy with daily chores. During the retreat, all you have to do is to be mindful of every phenomena manifested. So you can be mindful of desire whenever it takes place. Note it, desire, desire, desire. Thoroughly capture it so that you can overcome desire. Before your concentration is strong enough, however, you may not be able to overcome it right away, but don't give up easily. Keep noting it as often as it occurs. If you cannot stop it by noting 1 or 2 times, then note it 3 or 4 times, or 5 or 10 times, or 20 or 30 times. Note it as often as it repeats until it no longer recurs in the end. Being mindful means waging a war on mental defilements, kilesa. So don't give up, but keep fighting until you win. It is not just about a theory, but about the facts you have also experienced. Some yogi very strong and they win many times. And the desire abandoned by means of mindfulness may not recur even when you reflect the objects that arouse the desire. So mindfulness is the best way of overcoming the mental defilements. In this regard here, the verse by Mahasi Sayadaw is sensual desire means death, take a prompt action to remove it. Mahasi Sayadaw said. If you cannot remove it, you cannot expect to earn the privilege of dwelling in the abode of the Ariyas, abode of the noble ones. If you are able to note and remove such mental hindrances, you will be guaranteed blissful rebirth after death. On the other hand, there is no such guarantee for those who die with kilesa, mental defilements, still lingering in them. Like residents of a tumble-down house exposed to all kinds of danger, Putujana, an ordinary person, is always at the risk of landing in the four woeful states. During the time of the Lord Buddha, there was a monk called Tesa. One day, his sister offered very good quality robes, expensive robe, and Tesa Bhikkhu loved it very much. Love for something means sensual desire, Kāmacchanda. Intent on wearing this robe, the next day, Bhikkhu Tesa hung it on the clothesline and went to bed. Very unfortunately, on that very night, Bhikkhu Tesa suddenly got sick and died. Given his moral purity, Tesa should have landed in the celestial realms. However, unfortunately, he was reborn as a louse on that very robe. Just because of his attachment to that rope. You may find it hard to believe that a human being was reborn as a louse. A monk was reborn as a louse. Nowadays, there are some materialistic people have some idea but according to the Buddha's teaching, a being is not a solid form, but only a process of psychophysical phenomena, which cannot be defined in size or dimension. In such a psychophysical process, the mind is a determining factor. So in the doctrine of dependent origination, Paticcasamuppada, it says, avijja picca sankhara, depending on delusion, there arise karma formation. Sankara Vicaya Vijnana, depending on karma formation, there arises rebirth consciousness. Thus, neither physical phenomena nor their energy transfer from the past life to this life, but only the process of mental energy keeps going on from one life to another. That is why there is no difference between a huge elephant and minute ants in the case of rebirth. Moreover, the consciousness of an ordinary human being does not differ basically from that of an animal. It is not sensible to consider such ordinary kinds of consciousness to be superior forever. Evidently, there are some people who are born with a great personality, but later in life go insane for some reason. So there is no basis for the view that a human as an ultimate being is no longer subject to an inferior rebirth after death. There is a view in conflict with the Buddha's teaching. So we should develop our mind. By what? We can develop our mind by nurturing it with saddha, faith, energy, virya, vigilance, sati, and so on. The mental process nurtured in this way would be reformed by itself into the pure or superior moral process in terms of blissful rebirth as a human or celestial beings after death. On the other hand, the mind defies with greed, hatred, evil, etc., would lead to be reborn in woeful states, namely hell, animal kingdom, and hungry ghost kingdom, etc. Of course, this raises a question of how consciousness can reach a far distant place like heaven or hell. This fact is that consciousness is of no solid form, and so distance makes no difference to consciousness. For example, let us say you first think of your back, and then the very famous pagoda in other country. Which one takes you longer to think of, your back or the famous pagoda? No one takes you longer than other. You can gain mental access to either one as soon as you think of it, irrespective of distance. So the consciousness has no barrier to any objects. As for your physical body to be there, you have to take a taxi from the town to the harbor and then to take a boat from there to the shore of the city and take a taxi again to that famous pagoda. It will definitely take you very long. On your way back home, you have to take the same length in time again. There is a difference between nama and rupa, mind and body. The mind can go to and come back from famous pagoda freely and instantly. You can even go other country without money, travel documents like passport, visa, and departure form, and so on. In the same way, the consciousness can reach anywhere, any heavenly realms. It can go, it can reach without any delay or barrier. So living beings can have blissful or woeful rebirth after death, depending on their final thought process on their deathbeds. If they die with wholesome thoughts, they would be reborn in a blissful realms, humans or celestial realms. Referring to their rebirth consciousness, we say a conventional sense that they become human beings or deities. If they get unwholesome thoughts when dying, their death, their death would be succeeded by inferior rebirth consciousness, referring to which we usually say that he falls down to the hell or becomes a car or a dog. In the story, Venerable Texa died with the desirous thoughts of his robe. In ultimate sense, death means the last mind moment in one's life. So his death was immediately succeeded by rebirth consciousness, the birth of a loss. Referring to that, we say that Venerable Desa become a loss. As a matter of fact, nothing transferred from Venerable Desa to the loss except the causal relationship between Venerable Desa attachment to his robe and the rebirth consciousness as a loss on that very robe. So let us ponder why Venerable Desa became a loss. Was it because he broke moral precept Sila? No, his moral conduct was totally pure. Then why? It was because at his last moment he failed to be mindful of the attachment to his robe. Meaning he was then in an ordinary house instead of in the abode of noble ones. There are many ways Buddha taught for a monk to overcome the attachment to requisites like robe, monastery, etc. One of them is reflection method. Reflect the correct use of a robe. In this way, that means that the monk have to reflect. Reflecting rationally, I use the robe just for prevention from cold, for prevention from heat, for prevention from contact with flies, mosquitoes, wind, heat, and reptiles, and especially for the purpose concealing the private parts. The monk have to reflect in this way when he wear the robe. So the monastics are instructed to reflect rationally the use of a robe, such as prevention from cold and heat and so on. Lay people normally wear clothes with the purpose to beautify their bodies. That is not correct use of a robe for the monastics. A monk or a nun is instructed to wear a robe with the purpose to protect from cold, heat, flies, mosquitoes, winds, and so on, and with the purpose to cover up the private parts. Apparently, the monastics are advised to reflect that they wear a robe inevitably to cover their bodies with it, exactly like covering up an ulcer or filthy things to prevent flies from coming around. So for the monastics, the ethics value of clothes does not matter, and therefore there is no reason for them to be satisfied or dissatisfied with their robe. In this way, the attachment to a robe can decrease to some extent, if not to an absolute minimum. So another method to overcome the attachment or sensual desire is to reflect on the repulsiveness of the body or to contemplate the causality and impermanence of conditioned phenomena. The best method, the simplest method among others, is to develop mindfulness by noting the attachment as long as it persists. Normally, it disappears after a while when noted concurrently and carefully. Even if it does not disappear immediately, you will be safe under the protection of mindfulness in the abode of noble ones, Ariyas. So if Venerable Desa had passed away with mindfulness, he could have been reborn as a deities in the blissful realms because of his virtue, but not as a loss. However, unfortunately, Venerable Desa failed to be mindful of the attachment. In this way, he dwelled in the house of common people, Thuzana, which was exposed to the danger of woeful rebirths. So immediately after death, that monk was reborn as a loss. What a big loss. So in this case, we need to ponder deeply. It was a single robe, something humble, something simple that monk Tesa got attached to. Yet, monk Tesa got attached to it so strongly that he could not let, let go of it. As a result, he was born as a loss on it. So consider how many desirable objects we have possessed and get attached to, whether we are sure that we can let go of them all when the time comes. When the dying moment, if we are sure we can, then we will be the winner. Otherwise, we must be prepared ahead of time to build the abode of noble ones. So we will continue Kāmacchanda. Since the Zion is weak, we have to stop our discourse for today by noting every phenomena occurring at the six senses continuously and meticulously, by observing rising, falling, sitting, touching, sense desire, airways, sloth and torpor, skeptical doubt, restlessness and remorse, continuously and meticulously. May all yogis be liberated from suffering. May all yogis realize the real peace in the very near future. So